The NBA has a Jalen Suggs problem where these front offices, they give these players year after year crazy extensions because they don't want to lose their wins. They don't want to lose the picks they felt like they hit on. Welcome to Hooponomics, where we talk about the game within the game, the business aspect of the National Basketball Association. If your team is still in the playoffs, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button if you want more salary cap and NBA transaction content. But if your team is still in the playoffs, I'll see you very soon. As I was saying, the NBA decision makers are just in a rough position because I get it. You make a draft pick, the draft pick works for you. However, that doesn't necessarily mean give them a crazy contract. And that's kind of what we're seeing with Jalen Suggs and Orlando Magic, which a lot of people are assuming is what's going to put the Magic in a very tough position to continue to make moves to make this roster better. You feel, if you're the Magic, you feel like you may have your core with Franz and Paolo. However, with Franz not playing a lot of this past season, and hell, even Jalen Suggs didn't play much this season and didn't play much the season before, you kind of start to wonder. But your main two guys are Paolo and Franz. And the difficult part about this is, I understand that there's been trade rumors going around about Franz Wagner. I get that. I completely get it. But also what you really got to look at is that they're paying Jalen Suggs, well, this year they just paid him $35 million. In this upcoming season, they're paying him $32 million because last year he signed a 5-year, $150 million deal, which is a declining deal. So good, good for him. He was second all-team defense in 2024. But at the same time, it's just like, is that really worth the money that you gave him? And I feel like declining contracts like that are the contracts to show we know we are overpaying. And this gives us flexibility in the future. We're going to give you money up front, thinking that they'll also provide a lot of their value up front. That's another reason for it. But I feel like when you make those declining contracts, you just know that necessarily wasn't a deal you should have made. The problem is these teams don't feel like they can do it again. I feel like that's ultimately what it comes down to. These teams sign players to these crazy extensions because they do not feel like they can do it again. They do not feel like they can hit on that pick again. I get it that also you got to think about, like, for the Magic, in the Magic's case, Jalen Suggs was a top 5 pick. So maybe, obviously, you think that the Magic, we don't want to be top 5 again to be in that situation to draft that guy. But if you're looking at what Jalen Suggs provides, you might find that guy in that realm of where you're picking. What are they picking now? Like 16, 17? I don't know now, but it's just very obvious that they just don't want to. I don't want to say they admit that they're wrong, because that's not the case. Jalen Suggs is a good player. I think he ended up being somewhat, what you're looking for. It's just a matter of, at this point, your team has evolved. You look at your team, and is Jalen Suggs worth that to the team? And I like to look back, even though the salary cap has completely changed, I would like to look back at like Mike Conley's deal when he signed with the Memphis Grizzlies. What was that, 2016? Where he signed, I think it was like a $150 million deal. And at the time, it was a record-breaking deal. Everybody's like, oh my God, they're giving so much money to Mike Conley. But the thing is about that scenario is, while Mike Conley was a great player, don't get me wrong, and still obviously is look at what he's doing for the Timberwolves. But Mike Conley was the franchise. He was the Memphis Grizzlies. Like, you had the grit and grind era Grizzlies. You had, Zach Randolph. You had, Tony Allen. You had Marc Gasol. You had those guys. Tayshaun Prince was even there for a little bit. You have those guys. Mike Conley was the engine that ran it all. One, he was the point guard, and two, it was just obvious that overall he was one of the better players on that team. You look at Marc Gasol with his Defensive Player of the Year award, but still, Mike Conley was the engine for that team. He's the engine for them. I think they hit like 6 straight playoffs, and then one of them where they beat the number 1 seed San Antonio Spurs, and I believe they reached the conference finals at one point. So Mike Conley was that team, and you think about like just where that it's a newer franchise and what he was able to do for that franchise. Like, so much went into paying him $150 million. As I mentioned, the salary cap has changed, but what has Jalen Suggs done to push this team over the edge to where he generates that much value? And I don't think I've seen it. I'm not a Magic fan. I don't watch all 82 games, but they are a team in the division of my favorite team. So I've seen a lot of them. And Jalen Suggs, I think it's obvious. When he's out, it's very obvious. It's very obvious when Jalen Suggs is out. They want him to be a point guard. He's not really that. The way the league is going, it's just like it's not even really the way the league is going. It's more so how this team is constructed. The way this team is constructed, Jalen Suggs is not the type of point guard that you need. He can't shoot. Like, if you look at your top 3 players, the people you are paying the most outside of Desmond Bane, which we'll get to, the people you are paying the most are Paolo, Franz, now Bane, and then Suggs. Paolo, Franz, and Suggs shoot sub 35% for their career from 3. So then that forces you to have to go get someone like Desmond Bane and give up 4 first-round picks for Desmond Bane to average 20. And I think that's an efficient 20. That becomes Desmond Bane because one of those scenarios where, is Desmond Bane really worth that much? I don't think so. But what he does for this team as becoming the only guy that can really shoot, you have to overpay somehow. So you're paying Desmond Bane that money. You had to give up what you had to give up because there was no other way you were going to get the shooting that you're looking for because you put yourself in this bind. And I'm not saying this to pick on the Orlando Magic because we're looking at Jalen Duren possibly getting an extension of around 200 M's to 240 M's. Like, you got to think about Amin Thompson, who's possibly getting an extension at some point, who's extension eligible at least. You start to look at where that team is because they just slapped KD on a team that wasn't fully done being built. And I feel like that's what will happen here. They felt like Jalen Suggs was part of their core. They had Franz, Paolo, but then they just gave Jalen Suggs the least deserving of the 3 this big deal just because they felt like, oh, we need to keep him. But in reality, you probably could have found a Jalen Suggs elsewhere for cheaper. But yeah, like you look at Amin Thompson possibly getting an extension. You look at what the Hornets are doing with Brandon Miller. He's due for an extension. And as they just had a great season, you start to look at those Brandon Miller games. He scores like 25 and then he just kind of stops. Dude, like what is that worth? The extension amount that we are projecting these guys to get. Brandon Miller's a good player. Amin Thompson's a good player. Jalen Duren's a good player. But is it really worth the amount of these giant extensions that they're going to get? I don't know. And I think that's what the NBA needs to figure out. And by NBA, I just mean the front offices. Because, yes, the Pistons just won 60 games. So it's slightly different because they at least have shown you that their foundation can win. So if you are willing to pay Jalen Duren $200 million, I understand that the playoffs may not have been a good indicator of him earning that money. At least you can say we have a 60-win team. We're constantly getting better. And a lot of that has to do with the evolution of Cade. And right now, Tobias Harris is going stupid at the right time. But you at least have that foundation to say Jalen Duren was part of this true core. Like we went from being the laughingstock of the league. We won 45 games, gave the Knicks a little trouble, not serious trouble, but a little trouble, even though Jalen Duren didn't perform well in that series. And then now look at us. I understand that they just went 7 games with the team we're talking about, which is the Orlando Magic. But at the end of the day, they won a series. So you can at least, and then they just won game 1 against the Cavs, and pretty convincingly. You can look at that and say, okay, at least we have a foundation. I just feel like the Magic didn't have that foundation, and they just didn't want to be in a position to have to make that decision again on, can we get another Jalen Suggs or a player like him? But you got to look at the rest of your roster, and talent evaluation goes much further than people around the league and draft picks. I think that there's a problem with people evaluating their team. We've seen with a lot of these trades recently, we've seen people just throw players onto a roster and hope it works. They just threw Brandon Ingram on the Raptors, gave him an extension, hoping it worked. They just threw KD on the Rockets, hoping it works. You got to understand where your team is, and I just feel like with the Magic, that just wasn't the best decision for them to give Jalen Suggs this contract. But once again, this goes further than just Jalen Suggs. This is an epidemic around the National Basketball Association, because I look at teams like the Magic, or not the Magic, but the Boston Celtics and the Oklahoma City Thunder. I understand the Boston Celtics got eliminated. They were up 3-1 and they lost. I get it, 100%. That's on them. But at the same time, you look at how they operate. They are quick. Like, they got rid of Drew Holiday. They got rid of KP. They are getting rid of. They might even get rid of Jaylen Brown. And, who knows? But they're not afraid to get rid of people because they know they can do it again, or at least they trust their personnel, they trust their front office, they trust their coaching staff to develop players to where they may not be like this superstar. In with the Celtics, we have to talk about superstars if we're talking about trading, Jaylen Brown or whatever. But we can even go with KP and Drew Holiday. They were confident enough that we can just find this guy somewhere else. Yes, they played Drew Holiday because he won that championship for them. He was a big part of that. But we might can find that elsewhere. And they got Hugo Gonzalez. They got Baylor Shireman, who's not even known for defense, but like he just plays everybody on there just plays this team defense. Jordan Walsh, even a great pickup, when they drafted him out of Arkansas. They got all these guys to be like, you know what? We paid them a lot to do this, but we can actually find that elsewhere. And it just worked out for them. You look at OKC, they're quick to kick people to the curb. You look at how they got their core. They got Chet, they got Shea, they got J-Dub. Everybody else is on at least that movable contract, or expiring. So you look at Hartenstein. I think Caruso has gotten a little bit of extension, but even then, Caruso he's a vocal leader. He is a guy that just plays his ass off every time he's on the court. So they have these players and even Caruso's deal is not absolutely insane. So even if they feel like they can replace Caruso, another team's going to be willing to take a chance on him because his cap hit is so low. And it's not like a ridiculously long contract. So I think it's just a matter of how do you manage these contracts. And it's not always a rookie extension, but it's just about paying these players that you feel like you have to pay. Like if we look at the Raptors, Emmanuel Quickley, I don't think was necessarily a rookie extension. And they paid him 5 years, $162 million, and he doesn't even average 20. I like Emmanuel Quickley. I think they were an Emmanuel Quickley or Brandon Ingram away from winning that series against the Cavs. But once again, they felt like they had to pay this player because we have him and we don't want to be in the market of trying to find him again. But I just feel like that's what happens and leads to overpay. But let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section below. Like I said, I love talking about this stuff. I love talking about just the structure of the NBA and how these people build their teams and how they give out these contracts, because it all matters just as much as what actually going on the court. But if you like more content like this, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button and don't forget to leave a like. Peace.